Hello and good morning. You're watching The Mining Show, brought to you by Blythe Way on Core Finance. And I'm Charlie Gibson. Now, one of those parts of the world that has been in the news recently, well, maybe not so much recently, but certainly you'll recognise it when I tell you, has very much been in the news over the course of the last few months, is Korea, the Korean Peninsula, South Korea, and obviously North Korea. Now, some would say that where there are opportunities in these sorts of parts of the world, and one such company that is hoping to make the most of the opportunities perhaps presenting themselves at the moment on the Korean Peninsula is Bluebird Merchant Ventures. And joining me now is Aidan Bishop, one of the directors of the company. Aidan, very good morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank
and
you.
I see that you are looking to reopen South Korea's, and we should stress South Korea's here, second largest gold mine.
Yes, I mean the Gubong mine. It's an old mine with historical significance in South Korea. It opened in the beginning of the 1900s and closed in 1971. It is a huge underground gold mine. There's over 100 kilometers of tunnel infrastructure. There's shaft infrastructure there. So it's a very large mine, and the company is in the process of reopening that mine.
And where is the mine geographically within South Korea?
It's about 2 hours or 2 or 3 hours from Seoul. It's there's a lot of infrastructure and obviously an advanced economy like South Korea that we can access within 100 meters of our mine on good roads. So it's very accessible. The power infrastructure is there. At one time it was reported that this mine employed over 20,000 people. So the whole town of Gubong historically was built around this mine. So there's a big advantage for us over other mines that we haven't got to build ports, we haven't got to build roads, we haven't got to bring power infrastructure in. It's all there.
I was going to say, of course, most importantly, you've got the Winter Olympics coming up, haven't you? So, I mean, I dare say there'll be an opportunity for an analyst site visit.
Indeed.
But when you think, a lot of people watching this, when they think of South Korea, they'll think of Samsung, they'll think of LG, they'll think of high-end electronics, they'll think of, you know, one of the great post-war success stories, but they'll think of a high-tech manufacturing nation, probably. They won't actually think of it in mining terms. Does it have a mining, and obviously this mine, if it employed 20,000 people, does have quite a mining history, but does it in terms of the skills and the labour force, and as well as the infrastructure, does it have everything you need to open this mine?
That's a great question. And South Korea changed, as you pointed out, it's from a base economy to a technology, electronics type of economy, and has obviously done very well. There is a history of mining in South Korea, and we were put onto this opportunity by somebody who was the former chief geologist of Ivanhoe, and he led 3 discoveries. Doug Kerwin, who's a technical advisor to the company, he did 3 discoveries in South Korea that all went into production with Ivanhoe. So there is a history of mining in South Korea. We're looking to revitalise that. The government are giving all kinds of incentives to revitalise the mining industry. So one of the challenges is around the labour force. The skill sets are not there, given the shift into tech. So we're able to, we'll have to import some labour. We'll have to use technology to be very efficient. And the good thing nowadays is that when you have a plant, you don't need to have like hundreds or thousands of people to operate this. It can really be done on a very lean basis. So what we're trying to do in reopening this mine is to delineate enough ore for the first 3 years of our mining and then take it right into production. So it's a fast track production is what we're targeting.
Okay, so what have you got at the moment? Is there a resource there at the moment, and if so, how big is it, and what grade is it, and how much exploration do you need to do to get it up to the required size?
Well, our exploration is different from a greenfield type of project. So there is a resource, not a JORC resource, the Korean resources, which are not the same as JORC, but they are logical. It's a couple of million tons at about 7 grams from memory. Historical production records suggest that about 500,000 ounces have been mined, although the infrastructure suggests that they didn't report anywhere near what was really mined. So from records that we could see, they were mining about 9 grams a ton and getting recovered a grade of about 7 grams a tonne. So some very, very good grades there. And we've just announced this morning that we're expecting in early January to be able to release some assay results from underground sampling to confirm that the grades are still there. One of the questions I get asked is, well, the mine closed. So did it close because all the resources were gone? So
you said it closed in 1971.
1971.
When Nixon closed the dollar window. Gold was $35 an ounce. Isn't that right? So in fact, they called the bottom of the market perfectly.
Indeed. I was 1 year old at the time, Charlie. Our Chief Operating Officer, Charles Barkley, just celebrated his birthday recently, and I believe started mining at about that particular time. He won't like me for saying that.
He certainly won't.
But, sorry, Charlie.
Yeah, the gold price was very low, and of course, so that would have meant that what was not economic in those times is now economic and payable today. So, and of course, technology has advanced, and yeah, we are expecting there to be, like when in any time a mine closed, that they left a lot behind. So that is really what we are targeting as our bread and butter.
So I assume that what there is a honeycomb of tunnels in there at the moment. Do you know how many shafts there are, and how much of that infrastructure is serviceable?
So when we took the project on, the first thing was to uncover all the adits, because they buried this mine really, really well. So we started uncovering the adits, and we found some of the shafts.
So you're going into the side of a hill, is that?
It's onto a hill, and we initially thought it was about 1,500 meters deep. It turned out it's about 500 meters deep from re-examining the old plans. So we've been able to get in a few hundred meters inside the mine so far, and we've been very impressed with the infrastructure that is there. The tunnels are in good condition. The shafts haven't been used 50 years, concrete line shaft, and still in good condition. So it's a significant saving to the company. In today's terms, it costs about $3,000 per metre to open up a mining tunnel. And we've got 120 kilometres there to look around in. And it costs about $10,000 a metre to develop a shaft. And so there's a significant, in what we've already accessed and previously announced, there's a lot of saving that we don't have to, that's already been done for us.
And what about the orientation of the ore body or ore bodies themselves? What sort of geology are we looking at? And what I'm really getting at is, are they vertical, and so you can long hole open the stope pit, or are they sort of horizontal lying, so you'll have to do some sort of other, I don't know, room and pillar or whatever, but what's the, what is the plan, the development plan in your head, and how mechanized can it be?
Bit too technical for me, Charlie, but I'll do my best to answer this one. It's an orogenic ore body, so it's the plan really. Typically with orogenic, I understand it can be very high grade, and so we're seeing that. So what the plan really is just to access enough of the existing infrastructure to delineate the first 3 years of mining, and so we'll be continuing to sample, we're doing some metallurgy work, and what we're going to then do is put together a feasibility. So we have an opportunity to own 50% of this mine by producing a report on the feasibility of reopening the mine. The other half of the mine is an ASX Explorer, Southern Gold, and at which point, when we form the joint venture, it becomes a contributing joint venture. So the goal really is over the next 6 months to be able to complete this report on the feasibility of reopening the mine, and that will tackle and address some of the things that you said. We expect it to be rather mechanised.
And so in terms of the timelines then, what are we looking at between where we are now, and you said you want to do the feasibility to delineate that the first 3 years. So how long does that take? How much does it cost? How are you going to finance it? And, in the best case scenario, when are we in production?
Right, so I mean, since we took the project on in April of this year, the company has basically been financed by the management. That we've put our own money into it. Today's announcement have seen Colin Patterson, the CEO, very experienced in underground mining, and had some great success stories. He's offered to fund the company through to the pre-construction phase, as we've stated today in today's RNS. So that's a very, very positive for the company. In terms of the timeline, over the next 6 months, we will put together this feasibility. There will be more sampling, there'll be some metallurgy work, and various other studies to be able to put together an economic plan. And assuming that that has been completed, let's say at some point over the next 6 months, that will be able to show us when we can go into production. Typically, production could take place 18 months after that point. We don't know the costs at the moment. When we entered into the joint venture with Southern Gold, the target was to have a capex of below $10 million, so not much, and of which we would be responsible for half of it. So then, of course, there'll be lots of options around debt funding and so forth at that particular time. So at the moment, we're not so much focused on that. We're focused on completing this feasibility and being able to demonstrate to the market that this mine, that was South Korea's second largest mine, is going to live again, and it's going to yield lots more gold.
So in terms of the funding through to the end of the bankable study then, have you got funding for that, or do you need to raise funding?
No, we just announced that today, that the funding has been committed by Colin Patterson.
Okay, so that gets you all the way through then to the end of the bankable, and then presumably that's the point at which you, if all is successful, that's when you come back to the market and say, right, it's, however much it is for 50%.
Yes, and today's funding actually is more than just this particular project. We actually state in the RNS that we're looking at another project within South Korea as well, and that today's funding would take us through to the completion of feasibility on that one as well, if we take it on.
So is that blue sky exploration potential?
It's reopening a line. It's not really exploration.
So two opportunities, not just one opportunity, but two.
Could be. I mean, the funding is there to be able to do it.
And then, do you have any idea as to sort of scale? Can you, in terms of how much production in due course we might be looking at from the mine? Is it 100,000 ounces a year? Or?
We've put out a conceptual, or we've created internally a conceptual mining plan that is evolving, but we think it's going to be initially around 30,000 ounces per year, and then scaling it up to
100%
of the mine.
That will be for 100% of the mine.
Yeah, so attributable to U15.
Yeah, and then scale it up to 50,000 into 100,000 ounces. I think it's really going to depend on the outcome over the next 6 months, what we discover. There might be some opportunities there via tailings or via some gravity processing to be able to start earlier. But this will all be known over the coming months.
Excellent. Aidan, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Aidan Bishop, Executive Director of Bluebird Merchant Ventures there. And opportunities abounding on the Korean Peninsula. And as we alluded to, somewhere where we haven't seen mining perhaps for some years, or certainly a country that hasn't been known for its mining in recent times. But that's not to say that's not something that come back to it. So opportunities there. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. This is me, Charlie Gibson. I'm signing off for the Mining Show, brought to you by Blythe Way on Core Finance, and until next week when we'll be bringing you more such opportunities. Have a very happy Christmas and a capital day.